You ready to follow Captain America into the jaws of death?
Hell no.
That little guy from Brooklyn who was too dumb not to run away from a fight.
I'm following him.
Ow.
Careful.
I'm on the bad side of this desk. I'm at the...
What's the bad side?
There's just a thing here for me to hit all the time instead of
Thing for me to hit right here.
Well, you're meant to be on that side. This is not the side you're meant to sit on this desk.
Yoo-hoo!
Welcome to Marveling.
A deep dive into the Marvel Cinematic Universe in podcast form.
I'm Courtney.
I'm Tyler.
And welcome to our Captain America First Avenger episode. But wait.
I'm waiting.
We have a slight detour to go on before we get into little Stevie Rogers.
Hey, don't take that away from me.
I am just giving them a taste of your comedic
Okay.
aptitude. Basically, the Spider-Man Far From Home, the final movie of Phase 3, comes out today, and we wanted to get into a little bit of speculation before we go see it.
Yeah, give our thoughts on maybe what we hope to see.
And what maybe might be happening just based on the trailer, and basically, yeah, how we want to see Phase 3 wrapped up in a neat little bow.
Is Mysterio from another universe?
Another dimension?
Yeah, alternate dimension?
I totally think he is. But I also think that he's lying that he's here to help us. He's just here to escape the dimension
bad boy.
police. I'm sure that there are dimension police, and he's trying to escape them.
I think that he is definitely doing some manipulation, illusory.
I mean, that's his whole gig, isn't it? To be
all the monsters that we see in the trailer he's creating them. The fire golem or whatever they're calling them. Elemental things or whatever.
So basically, flat out, I would love to see a little bit more of an aftermath of Endgame in this movie. I really want them to kind of give us a better wrap up for now, the implications of this new world.
Sure.
I mean, half the population has been gone for 5 years. Infrastructure has been devastated. Some people may have moved on, started dating other people, even though they were married. Like, there's a lot of awkward situations.
Are they still married if their spouse died and then came back to
right?
life?
I mean, is it considered a death? Like, what's the whole deal? So I hope that they give us like a neat little wrap up of the Endgame implications and how the world is kind of recovering from that, because it does seem a little like, yeah, we're gonna go on a field trip to Europe, but
you want a 2-hour movie of all of the paperwork that everyone's gonna have to do.
I don't want that. I just at least want like intro to be a decent.
Sure.
Wrap up.
And I think the trailers, the one that came out post Endgame, showing the mural of Tony or Iron Man, and you definitely are gonna feel the weight of that on Peter Parker, and Happy's obviously in the mix, and it seems like he's got a bigger role in this one, which seems cool.
The thing that I'm also really curious about is I've heard like a bunch of times that this is the movie that's supposed to introduce Osborn, and I really there's no hint of him whatsoever in the trailer, but I'm hoping that it does, because I think it'd be cool.
Well, I've seen some leaky things, so there might be something, but I won't get into it now.
Yeah.
But chances are, if you're listening to this, you've already seen that
or you're
movie.
on your way to see the movie.
Yeah.
You might be.
I don't think anyone's downloading this podcast the second that it comes out, though, but we don't know.
My mom is a big fan of mine. I think Mysterio's being a naughty boy.
Yes.
Mysterio's got some things.
I hope he's being a naughty boy. I don't want him to be Spider-Man's new friend.
That would be insane.
Yes.
I mean, it's kind of cool, but it would also be insane.
Yeah, but he's a naughty boy.
He's a naughty boy. Isn't there's other characters that were supposed to be bad guys that are not bad guys in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, right? Like Nebula has come around a lot more than she should have.
Yeah, maybe, and the Skrulls and Captain Marvel. Yeah, no, I would be okay, but Mysterio's
he seems like
is
such
one
a
of Spider-Man's pantheon of villains. He's one of the top 10 of that or whatever. So,
or we might see something in this movie that snaps him to be bad guy, but he's probably lying.
I think he's lying. I think he's not from alternate.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think maybe what they're trying to do in the trailer is sort of get some of the into the Spider-Verse feel with the multiverse and all of that. I think that he is lying.
Well,
about that.
I do think that there's a multiverse in this universe.
Well, yeah, but I don't know if they're going to go
the
down
Ancient
that.
One, like, hands down confirmed it in Doctor Strange.
Okay.
I'm just saying.
But I don't want to see alternate versions of things, I think, in this universe, maybe. I don't know. So I hope that is more of a tease, and he's using his manipulation on Nick Fury, and maybe that isn't even Nick Fury, and it's all... yeah, I don't know. That, maybe not so
Big,
much.
bold claims.
You heard it here first. Hot takes.
Unless you watched the movie first.
Yeah, well...
we tried.
We did our best.
I mean, honestly, I have never been very invigorated for Spider-Man. I was so Spider-Man out after the Sony movies and Andrew Garfield's forays, but Tom Holland, Homecoming, all of the Spider-Man that's been in this, he's great. Boy. He's great, and I am very excited to see this movie, especially in a post-Endgame.
Yeah, well, I think if you liked Endgame, you are going to see this movie.
If you didn't like Endgame, get off my podcast.
Well, yeah.
Stop listening.
Pull over. Turn
your phone off the window. So, Spider-Man, are you excited to see it?
Duh.
I'm excited to see it.
Yes, I am very excited to see it.
We're going opening night. Got nice recliner seats. Gonna have a good time in IMAX. Woo-hoo. Yeah. And you're not gonna be like way far away from me like you were for Endgame.
Yeah. Well, you bought me a ticket this time, so I didn't have to get it after the fact. So
sorry.
No, it wasn't your fault. I just poor planning on my part.
Yeah. So now we're going to officially go into...
Let's get into it. Captain America.
My captain. My dude.
The only captain.
The
first captain.
The first captain. The OG captain.
Yes.
My favorite captain.
Yeah.
We start with this movie with a plane being found in the Arctic. Watching this again, I realized that they called S.H.I.E.L.D. right away, which seemed... Or they said they called what? They called Washington immediately. Mm-hmm. And I always kind of like wondered why when it didn't even seem like they had gone into the plane yet.
Well, I think they're trying to hint that it could be a UFO or something because of the way that it looks in the ice, and one of the agents or whatever makes a crack about how it's a weather balloon, which is like a UFO. So I think they're trying to be a little bit more mysterious about it, and the team that finds it is just some general research team, so they don't have any clue what they're looking at. And I did get sort of a Close Encounters vibe the last time I watched it.
Watching it, I realized that like when they were like drilling into the plane and like getting in there, like rappelling down into it, I got some serious like Indiana Jones vibes.
Oh yeah, no, there's a few nods to Indiana Jones that I picked up on a little bit later in the movie too. So I think that was definitely an influence on the style and everything.
Well, in the next couple scenes with Schmidt in Norway trying to get the Tesseract. Was definitely Indiana Jones vibes. Sure. It was so totally like those Nazis and trying to find that treasure.
And I think at that point he makes a comment about how Hitler's in the desert digging for treasure, and that's
he does.
Like a direct reference to Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah, I like paused for a second. I was like, wait, what is Hitler trying to pick up? Is that an Indiana Jones? And I think I agree with you. I definitely think it was, which is also just notably the first time that Odin's mentioned kind of immediately. Mm-hmm. And at this point, Thor had already come out. So we already had kind of our introduction to the Asgardians, which I thought was a kind of cool like nod to it.
Yeah.
But first thing that I guess bothers me the most about this movie is Hydra's logo is real cool. The skull with the tentacles coming out of it, which we get a nice, good like shot of right here with Schmidt
and the blood
spatter, which actually I saw like a little bit of trivia. The blood only splatters on the skull, which is like an allusion to that he's Red Skull.
Ooh, foreshadowing.
Right. But like the Hydra logo, like it's a real cool logo, but that's not a Hydra. That's an octopus. A Hydra is like many heads.
Yeah.
So that's now like I didn't even really think about that until this movie, and I was like, wait a hot second.
Well, and I think that goes back to the comic books, and that's a nod to the original incarnation of Hydra. So I think it's just supposed to be like a spooky, symbolic
Well,
little.
it's definitely like a really cool logo, but it's just like, just knowing my Greek mythology, I'm just kind of like, hang on a hot second, guys. You're not getting this right. Hugo Weaving, by the way, is an amazing villain. I love him.
He's definitely chewing it up in this movie.
Yeah. So then we kind of go to Steve in New York, and we see him trying and failing to join the army again. And the effects that they used to make Chris Evans tiny are insane.
I think little Stevie Rogers, as I call him.
Stevie Rogers.
I think I would say 2/3 of the time it works flawlessly.
Yeah.
And then there's a few times where his mouth looks a little funny to me, but overall it's definitely a big achievement.
I always was like, it's when he's like still that it's least believable, but when he's in motion, it's like crazy. And you'd think that it might be a little easier when he was like just standing still. But
I think it's a lot of when his mouth is moving, his jaw just looks a little.
Well, do you know
funky.
do you know the complete way that they did that? Because they filmed these scenes like 4 times.
Really?
They shot it with normal Chris just doing his thing so they could like get his movements, all that kind of stuff. They shot him with him alone against a green screen so that they could then make him tiny.
Mm-hmm.
And then they shot it once without Evans, and then once with a freaking body double who had like dots all over his face and the whole thing to then like put Evans' face over it.
Yeah.
And this guy, this like little dude that they got to stand in as his body double, like even still wasn't like small enough. So they even like shrunk that guy down even more because Evans had like started training like immediately and was enormous.
He was a bulky dude.
But yeah, and they would mark, I guess, on Chris Evans' chin where his eyes were going to be, so that like Sebastian Stan and everybody could like know what to look at. Yeah. And they would mark on everyone else's like forehead, so Steve like knew where to look up at.
And everyone was standing on apple boxes probably.
Yeah, I'm sure, like especially just trying to make him look like even smaller. But yeah, they did like an incredible job making him look.
Well, and I think especially for 2011, it's definitely a big deal.
And I guess they contracted like 13 companies to do all the visual effects for this movie.
Really?
Yeah, which is just, I mean, Marvel, I know, uses a bunch of companies across all of their movies. It's not just a single company for any of them.
Yeah.
But like that just seemed like such a huge number.
Well, and I think it's probably even more now, because if you watch the credits, like the names of all the visual effects artists, it just fills the whole screen for half the credits, it seems like.
That's true. But so we find out that Bucky has been, or not Bucky, Bucky gets in. Bucky's fine. Steve has been trying to join the army and keeps getting denied because he's a sickly little dude.
He's got a lot of problems.
The list that they like look at is like a lot of things. And one thing that I like actually really like didn't know, or like they don't mention the draft in this.
Mm-hmm.
And by this point, like they keep talking about joining the army and like signing up for the army, and Steve's like trying really hard to get into the army. But by this point, the draft had like been full effect.
Yeah.
So part of me like wondered watching this, like, do you think Bucky like signed up? Do you think Bucky was drafted? Like, they don't really talk about it.
Yeah, I don't know the timeline, I guess, of all of that. Because I think the draft was immediate when we joined the war, wasn't it? I believe.
I'm not sure it was like absolutely immediate, but it was like, I definitely Googled the timing of this year that this is supposed to take place in and the draft, and it definitely was in effect.
Sure. Well, and I think there's a whole level of like patriotism and building everyone up and trying to get them inspired and all of that. And they're definitely hitting that over the head a little bit, I think, with this, where it's trying to inspire everyone to want to join, and it's this great thing and all of this.
Right.
But yeah, no, I think they may be like fudging that a little bit just for the...
Yeah. We meet Steve as this tiny little guy trying to get into the army, and it doesn't work. And he ends up getting in a fight over just plain respect of a wartime prop short, and gets in a fight in a back alley, which... Well,
yeah, he sees the people in the theater, how emotional they're feeling and all of that, watching the newsreel, and then annoying guys just won't shut up. And that's definitely a major theme of who he is and who he becomes as Captain America, is someone who is going to stand up for everyone, basically. Right. So,
well, it makes me... I love the line when Erskine asks him, "Well, you want to go kill Nazis?" And he says, "No, I just don't like bullies."
Yeah, well, that's definitely I think the biggest thing driving him is that need or that want to stand up for himself, and then everyone else that can't stand up for themselves maybe. And they don't really touch on it much in the movie, but I think it's sort of alluded to, and it's definitely in the history of the character in the comics that his dad was an alcoholic and used to beat his mom and him and abuse him and all that. And so I think that going back to his childhood, he's always been that person who's been kicked around, and he's learning to stand up for himself and not take any shit from anyone.
Yeah, but he does have his good pal, Bucky. Oh, Bucky. Come save him in that little alley, which, just a side part of this whole point, it's really corny, but I love the trash can lid as his shield. They give him like a couple shields throughout the movie before he gets his actual one, and I love each one of them. I don't know why, just the fact that he's so ready to just use it.
And it kind of points to his ingenuity to, like, it's laying there and he grabs it and uses it. And
well, then I like at the very end of the movie, like another little kid is running around
and
with
he's
the
got
shield
the painted
painted.
one. Yeah.
The not shield, the trash can lid. But yeah, so Bucky shows up. Sebastian Stan, who originally read to be Captain America himself, didn't turn out, but I'm really happy that he is where he is.
Yeah, I think everyone got put in the right role.
Right. Which, speaking of casting, did you know? I'm sure you knew, but like the fact that John Krasinski was almost Captain America, consistently blows my mind.
If you look at early Chris Evans movies, he's not small, but he's not as bulky as he is in these. Sure. So I think potentially John could have beefed up a little bit if he got the role. But I'm happy with Chris Evans.
Apparently also Will Smith was in talks about it. Ryan Phillippe, which I don't even know what that guy's doing anymore. And Jensen Ackles from Supernatural were like all some of the front runners. And Chris kept turning it down, but they were adamant that they wanted him as their Cap, which I'm glad that they really fought for that because it turned out really well.
No, he's definitely the sort of the image of the all-American poster boy of whatever.
They put a little blonde in his hair, let his chiseled jawline shine, and it's amazing. But yeah, so Bucky shows up, and I can only imagine just Bucky and Steve's whole relationship has been so much of just Bucky protecting Steve. Can you imagine just the fact that he's going overseas, probably to die, and he's leaving Steve alone? I'm sure it was just eating him the hell up.
Yeah. Well, and I think that they allude to it a little bit in the flashback in Winter Soldier, but I think Bucky is sort of that older brother, father-y type figure to Steve because his parents are both dead and they definitely share a close bond. But I think they would in that time period, they would put on a brave face and they wouldn't kind of let that show, but I think it's definitely underneath. They
definitely have a moment at the end of the expo where I think
when he hugs him
and Bucky seems genuinely disappointed that Steve keeps disappearing when it's his last night in town sort of thing. It was just kind of a bummer. I do also it was a good foreshadowing when Steve asks where they're going that night and Bucky tells him to the future when they're just going to this expo, but little do they know.
What did you think of Howard Stark as he makes his debut at the World's Fair?
Well, so this comes after seeing Iron Man and getting used to Tony and RDJ as he is in those movies, and I thought it wasn't unbelievable to me that was Tony's father. Yeah. Especially just with his charismatic attitude and kissing the girl right off and that whole thing.
I did sort of get the vibe that he was trying to be Tony
cooler
Stark.
than he was.
Well, yeah, but he's trying to be Tony Stark light, where it's and he's doing his impersonation of Robert Downey Jr.
I think the guy who plays older Howard Stark, John
Slattery.
Yes, I think he's a much better Howard. Sure. I mean, he obviously wouldn't have worked in this because he's a little bit too old.
Well, and I wonder now, if this movie was made now and they had the de-aging technology.
Yeah, that's true.
They could have done that, and that I think would have been interesting.
We're about to see Captain Marvel in our next episode. Holy crap, did they make Samuel L. Jackson look amazing?
Yeah. Yeah, so I think, that obviously that didn't happen. So we got to move on from that, but I think that would have been interesting to see.
It's definitely I like seeing that Cap has such a good relationship with Howard and how that later ties into his relationship with Tony. Yeah. Just because it's your parents' friends that know your parents real well, but also you grew up knowing them, sort of thing.
Well, and he sort of becomes that connection to his dad, Tony.
Right.
He becomes that connection that he didn't have because his dad was gone, and
Right.
Steve knew him in a way that Tony didn't.
What did you think of the World Fair?
I thought it was cool. I mean, this movie came out a year after Iron Man 2, and there's the Stark Expo is in there, so it obviously was similar shades of that, where it's him performing for the audience or whatever. But I thought it was cool, and it's kind of a way to hint at the retro future that the movie's going to show with all the technology that's not really obviously from the time. And I thought it was cool. If you notice when the camera kind of pans down into the World's Fair, there's that guy in the glass cylinder. He's in like a white or a red jumpsuit or whatever. That's the original Human Torch from the 1940s.
Really?
He was an android that caught on fire or something. I don't know.
As it turns out, since we were in the middle of World War II and Germany was effectively winning at this point, it was not going very well for us. There is a recruitment office at this expo as well.
Yeah.
And Steve runs off to go try again. And this is where we meet Abraham Erskine, which is the German doctor who developed this super soldier serum.
The Tooch?
The Tooch. Stanley Tucci, I love him. Like, every movie I've ever seen him in, he's, like, great.
Yeah. Well, he's someone who definitely, he goes all in, whether it's
He does.
over the top in the Hunger Games or...
Oh, my gosh, yeah.
But, yeah, I think he kind of rides the line in this where he's got the accent going, but I think it works.
And I guess, like, just seeing this movie so many times and knowing what Cap becomes, like, that whole thing, I guess I didn't even realize that Erskine doesn't mention the super soldier program to him at all.
Yeah.
He just gets Steve a ticket into the army and waits for Steve to prove himself. Like, Steve doesn't know what he's going to Camp Lehigh High for. Like, he's just going to see what he can get into. And then I guess they kind of, I don't even know if they...
There's got to be some scene that they don't show where it's him. Because when they pick him, it cuts right to him. Not to jump too far ahead here, but it's him in waiting for the night of, or the night before the operation, and he knows that there's going to be some operation. Right,
which it seems like there's something, but they also just like have this whole boot camp of people in the science division that they're like there for, and they're trying to choose the best person, which they keep thinking that the bully that comes on to Peggy is the best person, which just
Hodge
gross.
Or whatever.
Hodge, yeah. But they end up just letting little Steve prove himself, and he ends up doing like the total sacrifice play of like jumping on a grenade without even the slightest hesitation.
Yeah.
Like,
well, that moment I think is well played, and you get kind of everyone's reaction to him doing that, and you see
which. It's incredible because it's Tommy Lee Jones trying to prove to Erskine that no, he's not going to be the right one.
And it backfires on him.
It does, and it's beautiful. I love it so much. And basically, I think my one note here is that just Peggy Carter is just a badass.
Yes. Oh, yes. Yeah, I think her entrance is pretty awesome when she knocks Hodge out. Yeah, I think right off the bat, you get a good chemistry between little Stevie and Peggy. Stevie. I think the flagpole scene too, to back up a little bit, is another one of my favorite moments too.
It's one of my favorites, but it hits me in a really weird way. I wrote down that in a way it reminds me of Mulan. And in a way, I absolutely love Steve's kind of sassy ingenuity like, in getting it down, not the normal way. But for a super patriotic dude, just letting the flag touch the ground, that's a huge ass no-no.
Yeah, well, it's not an American flag, though. It's just
still, you're supposed to, it's not good.
But he's got to get that ride. He's got to get...
I guess. But I was kind of a little like... Yeah. I do love how he did it, though, and just it proves in another way just how he's going to think outside of the box.
Yeah, so definitely. He's definitely not... He's not everyone's choice, but he's showing them through all of these actions that he is the right choice. Right.
So then we go to that night where he's finding out... I guess he's finding out what's going to happen, and Erskine tells him then about Schmidt and how he had been trying to formulate this super soldier serum for a while, and Johann Schmidt, who was, I guess, they make it seem like he was very close to Hitler's like right-hand man, really wanted it for himself and wanted to become a super soldier. And they don't really explain how he ended up like getting his hands on whatever portion of it he got.
Well, I mean, it seems like, because he runs the science division of Hydra, and I think it's sort of alluded to that Erskine worked in that science division before he left. So I think Red Skull taking the formula and using it is probably the point that Erskine defected to America.
Right. Which he injects himself with a very small amount compared to what's injected into Steve.
Well, and I think he says it's like unstable, or it's not
it wasn't finished. Yeah. And they also end up using the Vita rays to help stimulate the growth, which they don't, obviously, Schmidt doesn't get.
Yeah.
But as Erskine kind of says, that the super soldier serum doesn't just make you stronger, make you a bigger man, make you XYZ, like it also amplifies whatever traits you've got.
Yeah.
And Schmidt ends up being an absolute dick.
Monster. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that the movie is it's a little bit hitting you over the head with it leading up to it, but it's showing you that he is Captain America the whole time.
Right.
And he's going to get powers and abilities so he can do some cool stuff, but he's still the good boy that he is.
That good boy. So Erskine asks him makes him promise not to change, not to lose what's in his heart, which I love that part too. I especially with Steve not having a father figure, and
Erskine's definitely kind of steps in and
even
plays
if it's
that
just for like
that
a
role,
small period of time. I love the little relationship that they have.
I like their interplay too, where he's he's giving him the drink, and then he makes the joke about how
I'm not having surgery tomorrow. I'll have both. And the next note that I have is that Schmidt says "victory" instead of "victory."
Well, that's a silly German accent thing or whatever.
I couldn't not hear it. I had to write it down. I did like the time the scene in which he says "victory" is also the scene which we realize that his face isn't really his face.
Yes.
Something's going on that Zola knows about. I guess do we know how many people know about that? Or?
Well, I don't, because even with Zola, when he walks in and he's getting the portrait painted, he turns the light off. So, but I mean, I think it's probably a known secret in the top people in the science division. But I think other than that, that he's got some good mask technology. So
some super mask technology.
At the end, pulling the mask off is him becoming fully unhinged.
Right.
So I think he's up until that point and through the beginning, he's trying to keep himself a little bit contained.
Right.
And then,
well, he is still technically working under the Nazi rule under Hitler right now. Yeah. He hasn't defected yet. So I guess that could be that. But post that scene, we go into Steve becoming Captain America. He gets a little bit of a cute. I love his and Peggy's conversation in the car when he just absolutely does not know how to talk to her. It's always been very cute, especially when he's like, I got beat up in that alley, into that alley, way in that alley.
Yeah, no, I think that they did a good job of sort of setting up their relationship pre Captain America bulk Steve, so that it's not just her falling in love with the hunky beefcake, but she loves him or likes him at this point for who he is.
Right.
Yeah, I think the movie really hits its stride when you get to the antique shop and you see all the secret agent-y stuff, and which
total Indiana Jones vibes.
Yeah. Well, and what I thought was really cool, if the first issue of Captain America from 1941, I believe, his 10-page origin story or whatever is this whole sequence.
Oh, okay.
It's going into the antique shop, and there's an old woman who lets them in through the back.
So this is super drawn from the comic.
Originally watching the movies, I didn't know that it was that close to the original story.
That's awesome.
The music as they're walking down the hallway into the operation room or where the lab is, I thought that was, up until then, the music is good, just giving you kind of a feel for the time, and it's like a nostalgic, heroic, whatever. But this scene is when the music hits its stride for me, and it builds, and it's Steve sort of walking into the room where he's going to be forever changed. And I thought that did a good job of highlighting that.
He obviously goes into this chamber, and he's injected with a hell of a lot of the serum and doused with Vita rays, which come into play with Hulk a bit too, don't they? Like,
well, Hulk takes some form of the super soldier serum, and that's what turns him into the Hulk.
and there's also the Abomination.
Yeah.
That
And that whole thing is they're trying to recreate this formula that they lose because of the sabotage.
Which I did like think about it watching this. When the Starks are murdered not much later, but later in the future, and the Winter Soldier at the time he's stealing Stark's attempt at recreating this serum, right?
Yeah, but Stark's working with S.H.I.E.L.D. at that point in the 80s and 90s, early 90s.
Kind of fascinating that they like kept freaking trying.
Yeah.
Like, but it's obviously not working on anybody else. But I love this scene. I love him going into the machine and his little like sassy quip about guess I can't go to the bathroom. Like him in the face of adversity is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Even when he's like in immense pain, he's like, no, I can still do this. Like
Sure.
His belief in himself is one of my favorite parts about Cap. And I think
the big part of that too is that leading up to this point, not that no one believes in him, but
Bucky does.
Bucky does. But even Peggy and Erskine, they want to stop the machine when he's crying out, and Steve is the one that tells them to keep going.
Which I love that, like, he comes out of the machine immensely changed, and he doesn't even stop to, like, assess his body or assess what's happened to him when Erskine is killed and the Hydra agent takes off. He just goes.
Yeah.
He's like, I don't think I can. Like, he just has absolute confidence in himself, and even if he can't do it, he's going to try.
Yeah, well, and I think he has that moment when when Erskine is shot, and he's looking at Erskine, and he feels that motivation to protect Erskine's legacy and do what Erskine told him to, which was stay gold, pony boy. And so I think that the Captain America is that where he's holding on to those ideals and is trying to be his best version of himself.
And just something that I was thinking about is, so in the time and place that like Iron Man is, like when all those other movies take place, effectively there's no Hydra in those movies. This is the first movie that introduces Hydra, as far as I can remember.
Yes. Well, yeah, and what you find out in Winter Soldier is that they were there all along.
Right, which I think was it's now been so long since I've seen Winter Soldier for the first time, but that was like the big reveal that, oh shit, it's Hydra again.
Yeah.
But this is like really the first time that Hydra's mentioned and like super introduced.
Yes.
Because they thought that Steve had killed everyone from Hydra. Or not everyone, but
dismantled Hydra.
Hydra.
It had all fallen apart when Red Skull disappeared and all of that.
Right. This is also a scene where we get a secondary shield. He uses a car door as a shield, which I was like, I love it again.
Well, I love that whole chase sequence. I love where he's running and he kind of turns a corner and he doesn't know his own power and all he's too fast. He's running too fast and he loses control and he falls into the because
his body's so much bigger
shop,
than he remembers it being.
Yeah. Well, and he's going so much faster than he's ever gone and all of that. And I think Peggy gets a couple cool moments where she takes out the driver of the
Peggy
car.
Just standing in the middle of the street shooting a handgun. It's amazing. The last vial of super soldier serum gets destroyed and the Hydra agent kills himself.
Conveniently, there's just one vial left over from the...
I know, they used exactly 6, but we had 7. And it's,
in case one of them dropped, I guess, when they were transporting them to the machine or whatever.
The 2 feet it takes. Like, oh, God. So the Hydra agent dies, and this is really where, I guess, Steve starts to confront what Hydra will be, what a powerhouse Schmidt is going to be against him, and then they refuse to let him to the front lines. Steve gets to become a showgirl, which is the most hilarious, campy thing. I love those sequences of him just going through all these cities and becoming Captain America in like a showy way.
Yeah, well, and I like how he, at the start of those sequences, he's like has a smile on his face because he thinks that he's doing he's proud of what he's doing and thinks that it's helping, and he feels good about what he's doing, his part in all of this or whatever. And it's not until he gets to the front lines and sees that sort of stark shift and the colors change and it's that gray drab.
The color change is like they did a really good job with that. I did like, though, during the promo tour, just to touch on one more little thing, is that there's a couple shots where he's like recording in front of like a moving screen, like him walking with a bunch of soldiers, that like is a total mirror shot of when he saves
Yeah.
all
Oh,
the
yeah.
soldiers
With the
later.
Howling Commandos. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, in the 40s, there was a Captain America serial that
Oh, really?
that came out around the time during World War II.
Yeah.
So I thought that was kind of a cool nod to that.
And then we end up, like you said, going overseas to basically the front lines. And he's trying to be there to like bring on a pep rally, and the entirety of like the platoon is just like staring at him in silence. And I think it really like it drives a point home to him for absolute sure that oh, wait a minute, I can't just be this campy dude. That's not helping anyone. And this is also where he finds out that the 107th, which is Bucky's division, is mostly decimated or captured, and he doesn't know if Bucky's alive or if Bucky's dead.
Well, and you get some nice interplay with him. He meets back up with Peggy, so they have a nice conversation. I thought, and you see him sketching in a little notebook.
I wish they explored artist Steve more, like throughout all these movies.
This is another nod to comics where he's in another life he's a comic book artist.
Really?
And yeah. That's like his day job or whatever at one point.
Amazing.
Yeah. So I like that little hint to that or whatever.
Yeah. Finds out that Bucky maybe has a tiny chance of being alive, and is ready to just like drive through enemy territory to like see, just to find out.
Well, and Colonel Phillips again Tommy Lee Jones tells him that he is
Tommy Lee Jones
not enough and not worth their time again.
Right.
So I think that again there's a little bit of him where if you tell him no, he can't do something, he's gonna do it. He's
gonna do it anyways. Because he's gonna do what he thinks is right, which then also plays into Civil War later. Just his absolute bullheadedness about what he thinks is right or wrong, and he will do.
I mean, he is right, so.
Well, we'll get into that later. But just absolutely how much, and especially how much, like, which again, Civil War, how much Bucky means to him. Like he's willing to do literally whatever. And I do like the part in the scene when Stark asks if Peggy wants to drop off for fondue, and Steve's like, "Do you fondue?"
A little innuendo there.
Which he just has no idea what it is. It's just cheese, my friend.
No, I think that was good because he's still, even though he's in his new body, he's still uncomfortable around Peggy a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
And there is chemistry there, but I think he doesn't want to overstep his bounds. And
right.
But yeah, I like that whole plane sequence. I think is well done, and I like when he's jumping out and he says, Peggy says, "You can't give me orders," and he says, "I'm a captain."
Which him entering this Hydra base gave me like a lot of like old movie James Bond vibes.
Yeah.
And some more Indiana Jones, and really he has no freaking clue what he's doing. He's like got his prop shield, and he's like just hoping for the best to like just grab a gun and let's go try it.
Yeah, no, he's definitely similar to Indiana Jones. He is a little bit out of his depth, I think, at this point, because he really hasn't tested his abilities or anything.
For sure.
So this is his trial by fire.
Yep. And so we end up going into Hydra's base, and I was really kind of like struck by Red Skull's just like super cold, calm way of just like destroying everything. Like not even trying, just like,
Yeah, no, he's definitely completely
detached
out of his mind now.
Yeah. So he rescues a bunch of the guys from the 107th and other divisions that were being used as essentially like slave labor to build the Valkyrie, which we see later, and build other weapons and stuff for Hydra. And he does end up finding Bucky, and we don't know it at this point, but Zola was injecting Bucky with super soldier serum.
Or some form of it, yeah.
Some form of it.
He's a little out of it when he finds him.
Which is how he survived, well, how he might survive.
We'll get there. And I like the line when Steve finds him and he said, "I thought you were dead," and Bucky says, "I thought you were small."
And then he's just like, "What happened to you?" "I joined the army." Like it was really funny. And the interesting thing that I wanted to point out that we can talk about more later, but the super soldier serum that Erskine created changes, doesn't change, but it amplifies Steve's goodness, his bravery, and it takes Skull and amplifies his badness and how evil he is. But the serum that Bucky ends up injected with, like here and like later, it doesn't really like give his personality any kind of boost.
Well, I think that may be more just down to Bucky, and I love Bucky, but he's sort of a secondary character, so he doesn't get a lot of those character beats and things. But, and I mean, rightfully so too, because as we'll see in Winter Soldier, he does get a little screwed up, I guess, with all the mind control and all of that too.
Yeah,
so
that's true. I like how we also get like, so Red Skull and Steve come face to face, and I love Bucky's just quiet, like, you don't have one of those, do you? When Red Skull takes his face off.
That sequence is funny too, because like Red Skull's got his best friend and Steve's got his best friend on the other side, and they're like, we're friends, and
you can't join us. And he ends up also kind of goading Steve about how, like, you've got these powers and you're squandering it, but look at what I'm doing. And of course, Steve can't like say no to a challenge like that. Yeah,
that is the point too, where Red Skull's like, "Fuck it, I'm all in," and that's what he does his Mission Impossible moment and rips his mask off,
and he burns it. Like he throws it into the fire, so he's totally done with being anything other than the psycho that he is. Of course, they make it out of the space and they make it back to Allied territory, and Steve gets recognition that he's like literally never had before. Like actually,
let's hear it for Captain America.
Like that's like he literally gets everything. Like everything that this was inside like tiny little Steve, and now it's like on the outside. Like he is
everyone to
hero.
see. Yeah. It's another good musical moment when they are coming back, and he's coming up the road, and everyone comes out of the base, and
when
you
Tommy
see
Lee Jones and Peggy are having their back and forth, and you start hearing that music swell, and like the shouting that music is great during that moment. Which is, that's kind of Cap's theme right there. Like that's what that ends up being his theme. So right past that is basically the Stan Lee cameo that's like shoved in.
Yeah, I didn't love that. I love Stan Lee, but
I will say that metal scene has always like super taken me out of it.
Yeah. Well, and I think they get better as the movies go on with inserting him into
Well, I mean, it's not even that it's him there. It's that like it cuts to Washington, and it's pretty clear that like Steve never even left Europe.
Well, and it definitely seems like that would have been, if Stanley wasn't in that scene, it would have been cut from the movie. So I think it's only in there to get Stanley cameo. And it's fun. It's a funny beat or whatever. He has a funny line in it, but
I thought he'd be taller. No, it's always like really just been jarring to me. Like, why would you be giving Captain America Medal of Valor when you did not just see him out back with you? Like, you wouldn't. Well, I know. Wouldn't be like giving a speech without knowing he was right there.
And I think because this is when we start to jump in time a little bit. It seems like it's right after, but it could have been maybe a couple weeks after.
That's true.
I don't know, but yeah, it definitely feels a little bit out of place.
Past that, we go into Steve forming the Howling Commandos, getting his shield, like his legit shield.
Yeah, that scene, and I think it was in the trailer when Peggy shoots the shield. Right. That's a classic, classic moment.
Which I will say that I hate the like gross classic trope of like, so Natalie Dormer comes on to Chris Evans. I don't even know if she had a name in this movie, and kisses him, and Peggy walks in on it and refuses to say refuses to believe that he didn't want it.
Yeah,
it just like immediately gets all huffy and like grossed out about it, and it's like that's
and a little bit of that you can chalk up again, I think, to the time period where you're not like as open with your feelings about everything, and you're trying to keep it a little closer to the vest, maybe. Yeah,
watching it again now, and after having seen Wonder Woman now, the whole like bar vibe in Wonder Woman like matches this like bar vibe with the Howling Commandos like so much.
That I haven't seen. I saw that movie when it first came out, and I haven't rewatched it.
They even have like the random dude talking French. Like
it definitely seems like we're gonna do our Captain America movie now.
Right. So he gets his shield and he gets to pick his costume. He gives Howard Stark a list of things that he wants, which he actually keeps pretty close to his like campy costume, which I love that he ended up loving it. And how quickly that shield starts to disobey the laws of physics. And this is also where we get like, so we go into the montage, and this is where we get that iconic like cap shot of him throwing the shield at the camera. Yeah. That is now in all the Marvel intros, which I love.
I like the montage because it lets you spend a little bit of time with the characters, and you see them kind of throughout it's supposed to be at least a year or two, I think, from when he becomes Cap to the final battle or whatever. So I think it gives them some time to cover a little bit of ground. And it was a little weird, the scene where he's on the newsreel and he's got the compass. You get Peggy's reaction to seeing the compass on the newsreel with her picture in it, and then Phillips is like glances at her. Like it was like, I get it and it's cool, but it's just a little shoehorned. A little silly. But I think it would be cool to see a Howling Commandos movie.
And I hate that they don't actually like call them the Howling Commandos in this. They're just
but I think there's obviously room, not that I think they would ever do that at this point, because too much time has gone by, but where you could either do a movie during that time, or one after Cap disappears, because there's still at least a couple months of the war.
Do an Inglourious Bastard style thing, hunting Nazis.
Well, I think, and you get a hint of that at the end. They're definitely inspired by him, and I think you could do a movie about them and how Captain America has inspired them to be awesome.
Yeah, that's super valid. This movie seems to like wrap up so quickly, like now when I'm thinking about it, because I guess I'd never really realized how much of a good third it is when he's still very small. Yeah. And so we end up going to that train sequence, which once again reminded me of James Bond. They're trying to capture Zola at this point, and I guess this is the best point to do it. Yeah. Is on this train.
He's like transporting weapons. And
which we haven't even like mentioned the fact that like the Tesseract has been like used to harness like crazy vaporizing power.
Yeah. I think, and that's a good scene to kind of highlight how crazy Red Skull has become when he's getting all the Nazi officers, or he's showing off the technology to them, and he's talking to them, and he kind of like quickly counts how many people. 1, 2, 3. As he's like firing up the machine, so he knows how many to vaporize. Right. Do you think that the Tesseract is vaporizing them, or do you think it's teleporting them?
That's a good question.
Because at this point we don't know what the Tesseract is, but we come to find out that it's the Space Stone, and it's all about teleportation.
I feel like you like see pieces of them while they're being vaporized. Yeah. So I feel like they're dying. Yeah. I think my guess would be that they're dying, because
and it's
I feel like
siphoning the energy from
I feel like Zola is harnessing it specifically, harnessing a power to do that.
But I just, after kind of seeing what the Tesseract becomes in the Infinity War and everything, I am curious if even at the time they knew what that was. If that was going to be an Infinity Stone, or what its power was going to be, because it is a little loose it's just like a cube of energy.
And that's the first stone that we see in the MCU. Yes. So, I mean, well, we don't know it's a stone, but that's the first one the first powerful thing that we see. Yeah. Which is really interesting. I have to imagine that they were planning this for that long. Yeah. I mean, it would be so hard to tie these movies together if they weren't like literally like thinking about this far in advance. Like, we want to introduce all the Infinity Stones somehow. Like, I just can't fathom a way that they would.
Well, and I think in 2012 when Avengers came out, they said, because you see Thanos at the end, they said that at this point we're going to be building towards Infinity Gauntlet, which at that point that's what it was called. They didn't have.
Was he wearing the gauntlet in that scene? I can't remember.
All you see is it's like a side profile shot of his head. He like turns.
Oh, that's right.
Yes. He at the end of Age of Ultron, you see Thanos again in the post-credit scene, and he reaches out and puts the gauntlet on.
Right, that's right.
And says, "I'll do it myself."
So on the train scene, we end up losing Bucky through just a really unfortunate shot from that Tesseract, and
I like that moment though when he picks up the shield and he's got the gun.
Yeah,
and
I liked that a lot too.
It kind of a little bit highlights that he's like not strong enough to wield the shield because it like blows him back. But I think I like that he's like willing to do what it takes to. That's
one of several times that Bucky picks up the shield. I mean, he picks it up several more times as Winter Soldier and
who
past Winter Soldier, but. I do love that kind of shot.
Well, in the comic books, he ends up becoming Captain America for a time, so it's a little bit of a nod to that.
Captain America dies.
No. So I like that, and I thought, I mean, it's a little over the top, and I think like his fall, and I think at the time I had read the Winter Soldier arc in the comics or whatever, so I knew kind of that's what they were building to, or I thought that that's what they were going to be building towards with him. But when you saw that for the first time, did you know that he?
I had no idea. I was like, I'm a big fan of Sebastian Stan anyways, and when he died, I was like, oh god, like holy shit. And it was definitely like a very poignant moment, and we can talk about it more when we get to Winter Soldier, but like when he's unmasked for the first time, I like
you were surprised.
I was like, holy shit. I was literally.
That's cool. No, I think I like that because I had that when I read the comics because there's a similar reveal, but it definitely is a different thing going into it when you know that.
Oh yeah. I had no idea. I did not know anything about that, and I definitely got like blindsided by it in Winter Soldier. It was dope. But yeah, so then it really like gets into just kind of like the climax of the movie, and Steve is broken.
Yes.
After losing Bucky.
Yeah, and you have another good scene with him and Peggy.
Right.
And Steve finds out he can't get drunk.
Right.
I think this movie definitely does a good job of, when little time they have together, setting up their relationship.
No, I agree.
And making it this thing that kind of drives Captain America on when he comes to our time.
And during that whole scene, like Steve is super blaming himself for it all.
Yeah.
And I do like the way that Peggy is like gently insistent of like, he chose to follow you, like, which there are plenty of people that will eventually like choose to follow Steve because like they super believe in him.
Yeah.
Which we see like paralleled throughout the whole rest of the MCU, which I think is kind of like.
Well, and I think that's where he knows that he inspires people, but he uses that power for good, where he's not trying to abuse it and make people do things that they shouldn't do or wouldn't want to do, but is being that wholesome figure.
But so he decides to go kick some more Hydra ass. He really wants Schmidt's head. And through this, they've like captured Zola and have questioned him and figured out where they need to go for this last bit. And how freaking insane Johann Schmidt or Red Skull is at this point, because Zola just keeps insisting like, nope, he can actually do this, and all he wants is to kill everyone.
At this point, he's wiped out the Nazis that were working under him or with him, and is just going to take over the whole world by himself.
Right. And I also do like this point that Steve really didn't want to kill anyone until they killed his friend.
Yeah.
And then he was ready to kill them.
Well, and I think he doesn't want to kill them, but he will if.
Oh yeah.
I mean, if there's a bunch of bombs pointed at all the major cities in America.
He doesn't know that yet.
Well.
And he has a face-to-face moment with Red Skull again, and I like his line about just being a kid from Brooklyn.
Yeah. About
what made him so special. And I'm not. I'm just a kid from Brooklyn, which I think really throws Red Skull through a hell of a trip. Long story short, Red Skull ends up taking off in the Valkyrie, and Steve ends up hitching a ride in that crazy car.
Yeah.
Which I love Steve and Peggy, and I appreciate the relationship, but like when he's about to jump on the Valkyrie and she's like, wait, and like has to give him a kiss.
That was definitely the movie moment of
I was like, this isn't time sensitive or anything, Peggy. Like, really?
I like the line though when she kisses him and then Colonel Phillips is like, I'm not gonna kiss you.
Yeah, Tommy Lee Jones is just so like I truly just love Tommy Lee Jones because a lot of his little quips like that throughout this movie are like great. And I'll admit that I like got really confused by this whole plane and the like smaller bombers situation in a way that I think I've like let myself just be like whatever about before. But when I was like watching this and trying to be like analytical and all that kind of stuff.
Well, it's a little Looney Tunes logic where all the bombs have in big white letters.
Well, that was
like
ridiculous.
Painted where they're going and
but,
the cities and
the whole thing. So is Red Skull's plan to suicide bomb the big plane? Is the plan like there's one of those like smaller planes that gets tossed out in the middle of nowhere, and if like that's a bomb, like is that not a big deal?
Well, and I mean, as in going back to the montage, I think it's a little comical. Every time Red Skull comes up to his base, it's burning. So there's a little bit of the like he's at his last straw at this point, and he's just gonna throw it all. Whatever he's got, he's gonna throw it at the world and see what happens.
And then when Steve like makes that decision to like drive the plane into the Arctic because it's on a trajectory to New York, like. Is it just like he doesn't understand the controls to change the trajectory? Is it like crash trajectory? Are these bombs going to come out? Like what is this?
I think what what Captain America thinks is there are all these bombs on here.
Right.
I don't have control over the plane. I can maybe, and they say we'll help you figure it out. There's time to figure it out.
Yeah.
But he doesn't want a chance that they can't figure it out, and now they're over New York, and he's got this nuclear bomb of a plane on his flying it through over the city. So he makes the call to let it go. Right.
It's a hell of a thing that he does to, and his last moments with Peggy always just kill me.
Well, and I think it wraps up the arc of the whole movie, his arc of the whole movie in like a really beautiful way, I think, not to get all sappy, but where it's his choice to do this. And throughout the movie, everyone is telling him, no, you can't do this, or you got to do this, or you can't join the army, you're too sick.
Right.
You can't be Captain America, you're only one man, is what Colonel Phillips says to him. And even Peggy and Erskine trying to stop the experiment.
Right.
Everyone in his life has been trying to get him to be one way or whatever. And this is his moment where he gets to say, I'm in charge.
Right.
And he does it. He saves the day.
He does. Also wonder if the Tesseract snaps Red Skull straight to Vormir. Do you think so?
I think so. And I've been like watching the Tesseract scenes with the people getting vaporized and all that, and watching that sequence when it definitely seems like it's more of a beam with Red Skull. You see him kind of melt a little bit in it.
The universe kind of opens up behind him.
So I feel like, and when you get to Vormir, is kind of a ghost.
Right.
So I think it kills him, but it like transports his soul
that would make sense.
and traps his soul there, would be my thought.
That would make sense.
But yeah, I think it's still, whether they had kind of figured that whole arc out at this point, I think it works, and it definitely is a cool sequence. I think special effects wise, that's the coolest effect in the movie. I think it looks awesome.
And then we jump back to the future.
Well, you get a little wrap up with our supporting cast, which I like. Howard finding the Tesseract in the ocean, which is a cool setup for the arc reactor that he's going to build. That's what inspires Tony to build the miniaturized one that he puts in his chest. So I like the hints at that, and kind of how that ties Tony even more into Captain America and all of that. Right. And then we see our Howling Commandos toast the captain, and Peggy gets one last look at her little Stevie pick.
that picture that she ends up framing and putting on her desk. But yeah, and then the next thing that we really know, Steve's waking up. He doesn't know it yet, but he's waking up in the future.
Did you have an inkling that was what was going to happen, or do you think that he was still in
ice?
No, when we cut to him waking up, did you think that it was the 40s, or did you the first time you watched it, or did you?
I think that I realized that like something about it seemed off.
Sure.
I don't know. I can't really think about if I was immediately kind of tipped off, but like the fact that like his shield had been found in the ice in the beginning scene and all that stuff. I figured it must be something in the future.
Well, and I think Chris Evans, happy birthday, Chris, does a good job of playing that scene where you see the wheels turning in his head as he's listening to the baseball game, and he's kind of looking around at his surrounding, game. And you before he says that, you can tell that he realizes that something's not right.
Off, yeah. Which, and I agree, like his panic, which I'm sure was like really legit, like maybe this is Hydra that's got like me, which I was also a little like, holy shit, actually, and I didn't calm down myself until I saw Nick Fury. Yeah. And then I was like, oh, okay, he's like in the hands of the right people.
Yeah, because the agent calls the SWAT team or whatever. Right. They're in their just black garb. It doesn't look like anything in particular. So.
Part of me wishes that woman had been... She was originally supposed to be Natasha. Like, she was supposed to be... Scarlett Johansson was supposed to be that woman.
Oh, really?
Who comes in and says...
Why didn't they do that then? She was already cast as...
and she had been in an Iron Man.
Yeah, she was in Iron Man too. So.
I don't know why they didn't end up doing it. I was never able to find like a super clear answer about why they didn't.
Maybe they didn't want to tip that it was...
Right, that there was S.H.I.E.L.D. right
that
away.
It was our time, and it was that it was good,
right,
or that he was in a safe space, or whatever.
Right. But I thought that would have been cool to like, because Steve and Natasha end up having such a great relationship that like if they could like start it,
that would be cool.
Been awesome.
Like she was the first person that he saw when,
and just the Steve in Times Square is just like, and just his confusion and. All of it, I love that shot.
Yeah, I feel like he should be a little bit more confused about.
Oh, he definitely, yeah. So there are 2 deleted scenes on the disc, and one of the deleted scenes is like a longer interaction with Nick Fury.
Oh, really?
Which I actually like it like so much more because he explains how Steve survived. He explains like, yeah, World War II is over, and Nick kind of assures him like, there's a place for you here. Like we still need Captain America. Yeah, and it's a much better. It's not even that much longer, but it's a much better because he's like really like, yeah, you're in the future. Are you okay? And Steve's just like, yeah,
yeah. Like, I feel like they want to get the movie. We're done with the movie now. The movie's over. Like,
which was just kind of a bummer.
Yeah, I think the later Marvel movies do it like. They're not afraid to have a movie that's longer than 2 hours. Right. But this movie is like, wants to be...
Right. I wanted to wrap it up in a nice little bow. And then the post-credit scene, which I totally forgot that it went from the cool scene with him and Nick to an Avengers trailer.
Yeah. Well, and if that isn't a scene from Avengers, it's just it's like an extended scene that it's just taken from the movie.
So I was like, oh, I guess I've been spoiled with these end credit scenes for like longer than I realized because I was like, wow, this is just like a really like shitty 90s trailer.
Yeah, it definitely had the 90s slow motion and
Was that the first Avengers trailer?
I think so because that movie didn't come out till a year later. So that would have been your first glimpse at that, which would have at the time would have been cool.
Right. Yeah, I was kind of jarred by that post-credit scene and I realized how spoiled we've gotten. Yeah. And just to mention it, the other deleted scene, because I'm curious if you think that it would have been more powerful or not. The second deleted scene is a small snippet of the battle that leads to Bucky and the Howling Commandos being captured.
Mm-hmm. Oh, we see them actually?
You see them.
Oh, that's cool.
So it's the deleted scene is literally like the end of Steve's... big fanfare when he's holding the girls on the motorcycle. And then it cuts to them in like a foxhole, like fighting and like shooting and all that kind of stuff. And seeing the Tesseract guns happening.
Oh, wow.
And being like, what the fuck is that? And it actually like shows them, like shows the capture. Yeah. And they're like cool. Surrender, which I I don't know if it's like more powerful to like find out later that they like happened.
I think it was a smart choice probably to save that reveal.
Right.
And then I get the sense the way the movie is now where when they're seeing the guns on the base when they're escaping, they're all like, what the fuck is it? Like, they're figuring it out in real time, as opposed to having seen it beforehand and knowing what they're up against a little bit more, maybe.
Right. So that is our Captain America. And then this takes us into the 90s with Captain Marvel.
Woohoo!
Our new captain.
Yeah.
But yeah, so how did you, like, were you happy watching this again? Like, did you still love it the same way?
Oh, yeah.
Like,
yeah, I think I still find new things to enjoy about it. I definitely got, like we touched on, more Steven Spielberg vibes with the Indiana Jones nods, and just I think the director Joe Johnston definitely was trying for that Steven Spielberg by way of Norman Rockwell kind of feel the movie. And
did you know that they originally were trying to get Jon Favreau to direct this?
Really?
And then he was like, "No, I want to do Iron Man."
Oh wow!
Isn't that crazy?
No, I think Joe Johnston's good in this role, doing that sort of nostalgic feel. He did The Rocketeer, which is a similar kind of style.
How many Avengers out of 6 would you give it for a rating?
I think I'm leaning like 4.5 Avengers.
4.5 Avengers. Just for our listening audience, we've decided to rate these movies based on a rating scale of 6 original Avengers.
Yeah, I would say 4.5. So we'll say no Hawkeye and maybe half a Black Widow.
I think I'm gonna put this at probably at like a 4.8.
Oh, you're like Price is Right.
Yeah, Price is rating it. I'm giving it. I'm gonna take like 3/4 of Black Widow.
Okay.
Because she wasn't in this movie, so I can't give it the full Black Widow.
Oh, I got it.
Yeah. But yeah, I love this movie, and I love Cap's whole arc, just kind of period. So I'm really excited that we got to start with this movie.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good start to the Infinity Saga.
The Endgame tour.
Yes.
But yeah, so Marveling will return with Captain America. No, Captain Marvel.
I'm going to take that again.
No! Marveling will return with
Captain Marvel.
Yes.
So do you think that Brie Larson also had dysentery?
Probably. I mean, I think that's the most logical conclusion.
Yeah. Well, it makes sense.
I don't want to fight you right now, Jude. I've got dysentery.